Before we get going, I just want to take a little bit of a moment just to thank you guys. Since coming to this church, it's been a huge blessing, right? Coming in, you guys have been an encouragement to me. Every other Sunday, there's someone coming over and just encouraging. So thank you for that. And it goes beyond that, right? Like I've been receiving messages from some of the other cadets who are saying, oh, this person from Camberwell sent me a note just saying that they were praying. So I just want to encourage you and just honour that in this place, right? There's such a beautiful spirit of encouragement here. And I'm grateful for it. I know other people are as well. Another huge shout out, the Fishers of Men. Oi. I've absolutely loved, when I first came here, right, I made a warning. I said, I might love basketball, but I'm not necessarily good at it. And the boys still invited me in, and I tell you, it's been rough, right? Like I've been on the court, and I feel like every 5 minutes I'm turning to our coach, and I'm like, bro, get me off, because I'm about to die, right? Like I do not have the fitness. And I've come to the realization there's only one thing that's going to get me better, and that's by training my cardiovascular fitness, right? And I think this is something that kind of encompasses a lot of what we do right here in Australia, right? There's a hustle culture, right? We got to push through. We got to work hard in order to get better. And we're talking today about discipleship. And the reason I bring the basketball stuff up is because I know in my discipleship journey, I've applied hustle culture to what I do, right? So like, I had this thing of I'd get to church, I'd do the program, I'd do the things, right? And I remember every Sunday making a commitment that this is the Sunday, this is the week that everything's going to be different, right? And I'd try so hard and it would go so good for about 2 hours. And then I'd fail and it'd be right back to the beginning. And I'd continually be in this cycle, and it became exhausting, it became heavy, and it became performative, and I became a bystander to the very things that God had actually called me into in a life of discipleship. There's someone who, growing up, would often preach at our church and meant a lot to me, and her name was Marnie Turner, and she would preach certain lines, right? And there was one particular line that stuck with me very hard, and that line is, you can be so close to the cross, yet far from the blood. You can be around the things of Jesus, right? You can be around the church. You can know the songs, know the culture, yet still completely miss the person of Jesus. There's a difference between knowing of Jesus and knowing the person of Jesus. And so this morning, I'm going to be looking at discipleship through the lens of how do we sustain that, right? How do we continue that? And I'm looking specifically into 2 Corinthians 3, specifically the verses 16 to 18, and it begins in verse 16. It says, whenever, remember that word, whenever someone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. So a disciple is not just someone who knows about Jesus, but is someone who knows how to turn to Jesus. So point one, turn to the Lord. So, it's been interesting, right? Since coming to Victoria, it doesn't matter where I go, I get asked the same question every single time, right? Like I remember my first Sunday here, one of the first questions I was asked was, which AFL team do you go for? I went to my barber, it was the same thing. House church, oh my goodness, they talk so much about it. You guys are obsessed. And this is such a Victorian thing, right? Like you guys are healthily obsessed with AFL. It's a big thing. And I just want to say a couple of things, right? Firstly, settle down. Secondly, just to lay it at rest, being a good Christian, I go for God's team, Hawthorn. Love it. But there is this first point, right? It's turn. And I think Paul here in this first bit, he's asking a question. It's, who do you follow? Who do you follow? And there's this reality that's deeper than football, right? That if you're following anything other than Jesus, then there is a veil. What's that veil? Well, Paul in this section, right, he's actually going back to Exodus 34. And there's a story, right, where Moses went up Mount Sinai and he spent time with God. And because of that time with God, when he came back down, his face was glowing, right? And so they put a veil over his head to hide that, and Paul is looking into this, and he kind of says earlier, right, in the thing that this veil, it's on us today, and it's on people today, right? Earlier it says it's on minds, and then later it says it's on their hearts. But he says, right, if you turn, then this thing is going to be removed. This veil is removed. It's not about trying harder. It's not about doing all the things. It's not about rocking up to church. It's not about small groups. He says this first point is whenever someone turns, the veil is removed. I wonder, the veil today, what are those things that veil us, right? For some of us, it might be performance. You might rock up, you might know the things, and you perform very well, but what happens for the rest of the week? For others, I know for me, a big thing that kind of takes my time is this, right? My phone. It's sometimes the first thing I wake up to, and it's the last thing I put down, right? There's other things. There's the try hard. There's compromise, self-ruling, lies that keep people from seeing clearly. And he says here, whenever. Not after you clean yourself up, not after any of that. He says, whenever someone turns to the Lord, the veil is removed. And it continues in verse 17. It says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. So the veil is removed and now there's freedom. What's there freedom from? It's freedom from lies. It's freedom from these things, right? And it leans into relationship with Jesus. Whenever someone turns to the Lord, the veil is removed. Continue on, it says in verse 18, it says, but we all, with an unveiled face, beholding, as if in a mirror, the glory of the Lord, and are being transformed into the same image. Matt talked earlier this year, and he gave us this image of discipleship as being something that we follow so closely to the footsteps of the rabbi that we get covered in his dust, right? We get covered in his dust. So I'm going to try and illustrate this for you. I came from Grafton, right? I used to work in a high school there. I was a religion teacher and I was the chaplain, and I loved that space. It was really cool in a small town like Grafton, working in South Grafton High School, to just be involved in the things, you know? And especially in a town like that, they often have little quirks. And one of those quirks for Grafton was they had something called the Jacaranda Festival, right? It's this whole holiday dedicated to celebrate a tree. And you know what's even more interesting? They've got a public holiday for it, right? Like it's just this whole thing dedicated to this tree, and the whole town will shut down for that. And in all fairness, it is beautiful. Like for 2 weeks of the year, a place shuts down because, for the 2 weeks, the jacaranda trees are beginning to kind of hit their peak purple, and everything drops, and everything's just covered in this purple, right? It's beautiful. This is one of the more famous streets, but I remember even in the school I taught at, right? Just in between the blocks, there'd just be purple. It was beautiful. I loved it. But on this one particular day, the Jacaranda Festival, everything would stop and everyone would gather in the middle of town to celebrate a tree. Now, it was interesting because big event, all the kids would come, but they wouldn't come to necessarily participate in the festival stuff, right? They're not there for the rides. They're not there for anything else. What they're there for is because there's this ongoing tradition where kids would run around and they would absolutely just cover each other in shaving cream. Every year. Without failure, they'd do it. And it was so interesting, right? Because it was actually banned in Grafton for a bit there because there was some kid who brought hair removal cream and thought it was hilarious. So it's actually technically banned, right? And so for the month leading up to the Jacaranda Festival, this was bizarre. I've never done this before, but I remember getting ID checked because I was buying shaving cream. Bizarre. So anyways, I'm in that space, and I remember one time I was getting ice cream because they made Jacaranda ice cream. It was great. Anyways, I was sitting there and I just watched one of my students just sprinting past the ice cream store. And then another one. And then behind them was a cop, right? Like it was full on. It was hilarious. See, I was the kids' teacher. I did life with them 5 days a week, right? And because I did life with them, they decided that it'd be hilarious to kind of attack me. And so we've got this photo. I was not happy because, get this right, I was the only adult at this entire festival covered in shaving cream. People were giving me dirty looks left, right and centre going like, what's this adult doing with the things that the kids are doing? I'm like, I didn't want to. But anyways, what shocked me was I was going to the bathroom to clean myself off, and one of the security guards, right, he says, you must be one of the teachers. How did he know that? Well, simply because I was marked by the people that I did life with. Right? Here's the thing. Everyone is being discipled by something. Everyone is being discipled by something. Whether you know it or not, right? Like, I knew back in the school, one thing that got close to my heart was the fact that I did life with a group of boys, right? And they were just desperate to know what it was to be masculine, right? And so they would go to online sources to figure that out because no one was showing them how. And that's how they were being discipled to be masculine. There's other people, right, who maybe you're being discipled by your phone. Again, first thing you wake up to, last thing you put down. Maybe it's a shame and pass. Maybe that's dictating some of the things that is discipling you. Maybe there's a range of things that is discipling. What is shaping your desires? And if it is the phone, just quick thing, there's apps out there, right? Like, I love YouVersion Bible app. Every morning it comes up on the lock screen with a verse of the day. So I've been able to reclaim that to kind of get my mind on Jesus. But with these things that are shaping you and bringing in, the Bible says if it's anything except Jesus, then it's going to create a veil, right? So the promise of the text here is if you behold Jesus, if you look at him, if you spend time with him, then that's going to mark you. Going back to the Exodus story, Moses was up on the mountain, right? Do you think he's up there talking to God going, hey God, can you make my face glow? No, he literally went up there, spent time with God, and then came back down and people could see it. You will get marked by Jesus as you spend time with him. Spending time with him and beholding him impacts your becoming. You might notice the arrows. There's a bit of a flow here, right? This is part of the sustaining of discipleship. If you turn, then behold, you'll become. But what happens when we drift or fail? Because it's going to happen, right? That's life. We're in a world where everything is competing for our attention. In a world with things that are competing for us to look at and spend time on. Not necessarily all bad things, but they do drag us away at times. So I want to take you back to verse 16. There's a key word that I've underlined. It says whenever. This is not just a salvation moment, right? It says whenever. At any point, if you turn to the Lord, a veil is taken away. And then it continues on to verse 18. It says, and the Lord who is the Spirit makes us more and more like him. We become more like Christ when we learn how to behold Christ. See, friends, the Spirit's work in discipleship is never detached from Jesus. He is constantly in the work of redirecting you, getting your eyes back on Jesus. Constantly in the work of redirecting you back to Jesus, back to turning, back to seeing, back to beholding, and then back to becoming. So when you drift, when all that happens, turn. When your attention shifts, turn. When shame starts talking to you louder than grace, turn. When performance creeps back in, turn. When any of these things happen, learn to turn. Get your eyes back on Jesus. Can I get the worship team back up? Awesome. You can be so close to the cross, yet so far from the blood. You can be around the things of Jesus, yet completely miss him. Can I encourage you, and this is the invitation today, right? Turn. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to this and you've never done it before. Turn. It doesn't matter if you've been in it forever. You might have drifted or whatever. Turn. Because the promise of the text says this, right? Whenever someone turns, a veil is removed and there is freedom where the Spirit of the Lord is. So as we turn, we behold. And as we behold, we begin to be transformed. And as we become, we reflect Christ. But it all begins with this first point. You ready? Turn. So we're going to sing a song. And if you need prayer, there's a place of prayer is open, right? But the invitation this morning is to